Laura Smither, a 12-year-old aspiring ballerina, went for a morning jog near her home in Friendswood, Texas, but never returned. As days passed, Gay and Bob Smither searched for their daughter with the help of their community, thousands of volunteers, and even the US Marines, but no one was able to find a trace of the missing girl. April 20th, 1997. Laura Smither is found. After 17 days of searching, Laura Smither's decomposed body was found 12 miles from her home in a Pasadena, Texas, retention pond by a father and son out walking their dogs. After weeks in the water, her cause of death was unclear. Despite this devastating news, a suspect quickly emerged. It was William Reese, who worked at a construction site just down the road from the Smithers' Friendswood home. While Reese was on their radar and his truck was searched in connection to Laura's case, police did not have enough evidence to make an arrest at the time, so he remained a free man. May 16, 1997. Sandra Sapor is kidnapped in Webster, Texas. Sandra Sapor, 19, stopped at a convenience store near I-45. Sapor says she noticed a man staring at her in the parking lot, and when she saw him again at the Waffle House restaurant across the street, he offered to help her with a newly discovered flat tire. It took more than 2 decades to bring William Reese to justice for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, Tiffany Johnston, and Jessica Kane. October 18, 1996. William Reese is released from prison. William Reese, after serving nearly 10 years in prison for sexually assaulting 2 women in his native Oklahoma, William Reese was released from prison in the fall of 1996. After his release, Reese briefly stayed with his mother in Anadarko, Oklahoma, before moving to Harris County, Texas, where he found work as a farrier, putting shoes on horses, and construction worker. Reese made frequent trips between his new home in Texas and his mother's home in Oklahoma in 1997. April 3, 1997. July 15, 1997. Kelly Cox goes missing in Denton, Texas. Kelly Cox, a 20-year-old mother and student at the University of Northern Texas, was taking a tour of the Denton Police Department as a part of her criminal justice class, but left early to take an exam. Shortly after leaving, Cox discovered that she was locked out of her car and used a payphone at a nearby gas station to call her boyfriend for help. But when he showed up, Cox was nowhere to be found. Later that day, when Kelly failed to pick her toddler up from daycare, Cox's mother, Jan Bynum, says she knew something was terribly wrong. Jan Bynum's fight to find Kelly. Kelly Cox was a dedicated student, taking summer classes and hoped to graduate early with a degree in social work. Although Kelly was a young mother to her daughter Alexis, she embraced it fully. Alexis was Cox's whole world, and Kelly's mother, Jan Bynum, knew that Kelly would never leave Alexis behind. Still, the days of searching turned into weeks, and despite her best efforts, Bynum couldn't figure out exactly what happened to her daughter. With no body and no strong leads, the case began to grow cold. July 26, 1997. Tiffany Johnston vanished in Bethany, Oklahoma. Tiffany Johnston was 19 years old and newly married when she vanished in broad daylight from a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma. Her floor mats were still hanging on the drying racks and keys were still in the ignition. But there was no sign of Tiffany and no one at the car wash reported seeing anything out of the ordinary that day. Tiffany's mother, Kathy Dobry, was left mystified and wondered what happened to her youngest daughter. July 27, 1997. Tiffany Johnston's body is discovered. Just a day after her disappearance, Tiffany Johnston's partially clothed body was found in tall grass. next to an unpaved rural road close to the interstate. It was just 15 miles from the car wash where Tiffany Johnston was last seen alive. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted. Investigators were able to recover the killer's DNA from Johnston's body, but they could not develop a suspect profile from it at the time. August 17th, 1997. Jessica Kane's truck is found in Lamarck, Texas. Just 3 weeks after Tiffany Johnston's murder, 17-year-old Jessica Kane was last seen leaving a restaurant in Clear Lake, Texas, where she was out with friends. When Jessica missed curfew, her father C.H. Kane went out looking for her. After searching for hours, C.H. Kane found his daughter's truck abandoned on the shoulder of I-45, just a couple of miles from their home. There was no trace of Jessica and no clues as to where she was. Searching for Jessica Kane. Search parties and friends looked for any sign of Jessica, but they had no luck. Gay and Bob Smither, who were still processing the loss of their own daughter Laura, just 4 months earlier, joined the search immediately, saying they felt called by God to help. After weeks of searching for answers, once again, investigators were left without leads, and Jessica's case grew cold. October 1997. A survivor comes forward. 5 months after Sandra Sapore's abduction, during a meeting with Friendswood Police, Webster investigators realized that Sapore's description of her kidnapper's vehicle sounded similar to the truck Friendswood Police had searched in Laura Smithers' case, belonging to William Reese. On October 16, 1997, Reese was pulled in for a lineup, and Sapore identified him as her attacker. Reese was arrested and charged with kidnapping. He pleaded not guilty. April 29, 1998. The trial for Sandra Sapore's kidnapping begins. When William Reese was put on trial for the kidnapping of Sandra Sapore, his past came back to haunt him. The jury heard Sandra Sapore's powerful testimony, and his victims from the 80s also took the stand and shared how they were both brutally attacked by Reese in Oklahoma. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before they found Reese guilty. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison. Despite only having an agreement to waive the death penalty for Kelly Cox and Laura Smithers' cases, William Reese ended up confessing to all 4 murders. March 18, 2016. Jessica Kane's remains are discovered. 25 years after the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox and Jessica Kane, their families finally got their day in court. William Reese pleaded guilty in Galveston and Brazoria counties and was given 3 life sentences, 1 for each murder.